Alright guys, here we go. It's going to be a short to long video. I have no idea how long it's going to be until I finish it, so sorry about that. And how do I make this cupcake look weird? So I've kind of already made this before a few months ago when I prepped this class, and I kind of built these things up. So I'll just go through how I did that, explaining each step, and then kind of showing you as we go along. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those for now and just start new. Okay, so let's pay attention to the bottom right corner quite a bit. We're going to be looking at our layers panel quite a bit too. Follow my mouse, it's on top of the cupcake now, going to the bottom right. Alright, so we're here. Okay, so we can see we just have the one layer right now. It's labeled my background layer, it's locked. Okay, it's the only thing I have going on. Now when I say we want to work non-destructively, that means I don't want to destroy this one background layer that I have. Okay, so I want to make sure I'm working on something other than that layer. So I'm going to start by going straight down and making a new layer. Okay, it's this little thing right here, it looks like a new page. Okay, I'm going to click that button, go back up, it's going to show that I've made a new layer right up here. So layer 1. Okay, if you're afraid of getting disorganized or going around, you can click where it says layer 1. Okay, double click on that and it'll let you rename it. So I'm going to rename this background. That's what I'm going to make. Okay. Maybe that's confusing because we already have a background, so maybe I'll label it new background. Okay, you can add it as much as we want. All right, if for some reason that's not good enough, you can right click this little layer tab, okay, where this is highlighted, okay. And you can even give it a color. Maybe since it's the background, maybe I want that to be blue, okay. So it gives it a little color code. So these are all like little extra tools you can do to stay organized. If you don't really care and you're just kind of playing around, like most of us already are, don't worry about it too much. But when you start building bigger images, maybe that'll be helpful for you. Okay. But for right now, we just made a new layer, our new background layer, using this little tab down here. It's totally blank. There's nothing on it. I'm just turning it on and off to show you that. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clone this really pretty blue, this plate, into where all of this really saturated orange and red stuff is on my image. Okay. That is my first goal. Okay. So I'm going to start with over here on the left side, going to my clone stamp tool. Okay. If you click and hold your mouse down on the tool, you'll see what other tools are available beyond that. Any tool with a little like caret arrow in the bottom right corner of its icon will have extra tools for you. Okay. So I'm going to go to the clone stamp tool right here. If you like hotkeys, that is S on the keyboard. Okay. So clone stamp tool. The way this tool works is you decide where you want to source what you're going to paint on with your brush. Okay, so I already know that I want to clone and stamp, okay, this blue plate. All right, so I'm going to hold down the Alt button on my keyboard and you'll see that my cursor will change. Okay, so it goes from a regular brush circle to this kind of target icon. Okay, so I'm holding down the Alt key, I'm letting it go, I'm holding it down, I'm letting it go, I'm holding the Alt key. Okay, so holding the Alt key and I'm going to start to decide where I want to start cloning things. All right, I'm going to start down here in this little foreground area. So I'm going to kind of clone some things that are also in the foreground area. So I'm going to start about right here. So I'm going to Alt, click, let go of Alt. And when I start to brush, you'll notice that it's going to take whatever is there at the first point and put it where I want to. Okay. This is important to decide when you want to plan things out. So if I start way down here, knowing that my cursor is starting here, okay, I'm only going to have this much space to paint with. Okay. So why don't we start right in the middle right here, okay? And I'm going to go up until I kind of reach that blue. That's perfect, okay? And I'm going to be a little sloppy with it. That's okay. I'm going to stop when I start to see things like this, okay? So that's not the blue that I want. And I'm just going to get a new source point by holding down Alt, okay, right here, and then dragging over that, okay? And I'm just going to rinse and repeat that, okay? So I'm doing this a little faster now just to get through it, okay? But I'm just going to clone and paste as much blue texture as possible to get rid of all this orange texture. I don't care what it looks like, all right? I'm just kind of grabbing some things right now. I just want to get rid of that one color as much as possible, all right? And get rid of any edges that look really weird, okay? So that's not bad. I'm going to do the same thing up here, okay? So I just have my thumb on top of the Alt key so that when I want to, I can grab a new texture from wherever and then keep going, okay? So I'm going to do the same thing going up, okay? I'm going to start down here, Alt click, and just start working my way up. I'm going to be very careful as I go around these candles, but we'll probably go back and do an extra step to make sure we get them entirely. Okay, that's pretty good. So I shouldn't have any orange table left. I just got a really big blue plate now. And again, I'm leaving all these heavy marks behind because I want to show that labor, okay? Just like Lucas Blaylock and Daniel Gordon, okay? So that's great. That's my plate, right? Now I said I might go back and do a selection of this cupcake so I can put it back on top. So let's go ahead and do that, okay? So it's going to require us to turn it on and off a few layers and also change a few tools. So I think this will be good. So I'm going to go back to my layers panel in the bottom right here. And you'll see now that my once blank new background layer is now full with everything that I've just painted in, okay? So you'll see everything that you painted in here in a little thumbnail, and then this kind of checkerboard pattern is where there isn't any image, so totally transparent. So that transparent part is falling down what we see below. So if we just kind of visualize this kind of empty space going down, we'll get the image that we have over here, okay? So if you're ever confused about what's the interaction is, you can kind of look at these things in a good linear order and see what's laying on top of other things. So hypothetically, if there was another image underneath this background, right, there's all image there, so we wouldn't see any of it, okay? So it's important to notice when we have transparency and not. So let's go back and get this cupcake one more time. So I'm going to turn this layer off, just the visibility of it, okay? So to the left of the thumbnail is a little eyeball. So let's just click that eyeball, it will turn on and off, okay? It's not deleting the layer, it's not disabling it, it's just making sure that I can't see it, okay? Which just allows me to look at the layers underneath in a lot more visible terms, okay? So I'm noticing that I'm getting a little close to these little candle pieces up here, typically these two out here, okay? So I'm going to make a little selection around those and then duplicate them so that I can exist on a new layer above this one, okay? That way they'll always be on top, okay? So I'm going to start by hiding this new background layer that I made, okay? I'm going to click on the original background layer that I want to make a selection out of, okay? And that's just highlighted now. Then I'm going to zoom in to this area right here just so I can work on it a little better, okay? So there is a magnifying glass tool on the left over here, which you can just click and drag to fill your screen, okay? You can also just do Control plus or minus to zoom in, okay? And then if you hold down the space bar when you're zoomed into your image, it'll create this little hand icon, which you can use to just pan around by clicking and dragging, like you would on a tablet. Okay? So again, I'm just kind of focusing on these two candles, so I'm just kind of organizing my screen so I have enough space to deal with this, right? It's just kind of like working on something in front of you, okay? And I want to make a selection of these candle wicks and the candles themselves, okay? Mostly just the stuff hanging out here where the red stuff is, okay? So there's a couple ways to do this. I'm just going to do what I think will be the easiest one. So on the left is a lasso tool, and if you click and reveal the other lasso tools, there is one called magnetic lasso tool, okay? So if there's an image with a lot of contrast and a difference between what you're trying to select, right, it does a really good job. So since this is so bright, this is so dark, and they're both different colors, I can click and drag around this with my magnetic lasso and get a pretty good selection. So I'm going to start down here on this flame down here, okay? Start right in the middle. Just going to click somewhere close on the edge of that, right? And I'm not doing anything, I'm just kind of dragging it around the edge until I'm seeing it close, okay? Now, in some cases, it's not going to grab the things that you want, so you can always add an extra point by clicking, okay? So I clicked on that one, and this one, and these next few right there, okay? Because that was a really intense zone that I want to make sure it got right, okay? So I'm not clicking anymore, it's just kind of grabbing this flame really well. You can also move faster in those areas, okay? I'm going to click one there at the top. Okay, and we see it messed up, but we can go back and fix that. So I'm just going to kind of click a few of these softer corners going down, okay? From here, I'm just going to go ahead and connect it. I'm just kind of going back to the very first point with that. So you'll see on the magnetic lasso tool, when I go to that point, right, there's like a little circle that appears under it, right? That circle just means that you're hitting the end point, so you're finishing the loop, you're finishing the circle, right? So I move off of it, there's no symbol, move to it, there's a symbol. Once you click on that, it'll make a selection for you. Okay. So that's my selection. Okay, that's a pretty good job, minus this one little piece right here. So I'm going to go zoom in a little bit more to show you guys. Okay. So you can see the selection got a little messed up and it went in too far. Okay, so I'm going to redraw it right down here. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my lasso tool, the regular one. Okay, and I want to add to the selection. So in order to add to a selection that's already been made, I need to hold down the Shift key. Okay, and you'll see the lasso tool go from a regular tool, right, where it has a little plus sign next to it. So the opposite thing happens if you hold down Alt. Okay, so now it's a minus selection. Okay, so I want to add to the selection, so I'm going to hold down Shift while I do this, and I'm just going to drag from up here and just draw a rough line. Okay, it's really small, so you can take your time on what that little symbol is, and holding Shift the whole time, I'm just adding a little bit more pixels. Okay, now I can do the same thing if I want to subtract some. This is very little, but I'll just do it to show you. So holding down Alt, getting rid of some. Okay, and you can always pan down and pan up on those selections to see if you got the right things. Okay, I think that's quite good, so I'm going to zoom back out. So I'm just going to do Control minus, hold down spacebar, and move around a little bit. Okay. So once I've made that selection, I can now make a duplication of that selection for my original layer. Okay. So I'm still selected on my original background layer. Okay. And I want to make a duplication of just the selection. The quickest and easiest way to do this is with a hotkey. So I'm going to just go ahead and do that. It's going to be Control J, J as in Jupiter. Control J, and you'll see that it duplicates a layer right above our background. Okay, it's just renaming it to layer 1. I'm going to rename this as new candles. Okay, so I know what it is. It's a really small type of image, right, because it's such a big kind of canvas, but you can see the little candles almost right there. Okay, so I'm going to rename that just so I know what's going on there. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I want to make sure that this appears on top of everything, so I'm just going to drag this layer above my newest one. Okay, and then switch places. Okay, so when I turn my new background layer back on by clicking on this little square icon where the eye used to be, I'll make sure those candles are always on top. So if I turn that on and off, you can see where the candles on top actually make a small difference. Okay, great, fantastic. Okay, so now I want to make my cupcake a little larger. Okay, so I'm going to press Control 0, which makes it fit to my screen. Okay, so Control 0 is right there. Do a little bit smaller. Okay, and all I want to do is start to exaggerate the size of this cupcake. Okay, so I want it to be bigger. I want more icing maybe. Actually, I want a shit ton of icing. So let's do that. So I'm going to make a new layer again. Okay, brand new blank layer. Okay, it's this little new page icon down here. And I'm going to call this bigger cupcake. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go back with my clone stamp tool. Okay, I'm on a new layer. I'm on current and below. Okay, what we want to do is we want to kind of control it, make sure we're gathering from all layers now, because we want to make sure we're always working on the image we're looking at. So up top here, you'll see where it says sample. Okay, and we're going to do all layers. Okay, that way with my blank layer, it'll actually draw some stuff on there for me. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to start moving some of this frosting out. I'm going to get a slightly smaller brush. Okay. I find it easier to use the bracket keys on your keyboard. So if you go to where your enter key is, in between the enter key and the letter P, there should be 2 bracket tools. Okay, right bracket makes it bigger, left bracket makes it smaller. Okay, if that's too much for you, you can always just use the top left panel up here and just change the size manually. Okay, so I'm going to use these brackets to make it a little bit smaller. I'm looking for about the width of this icing right here. And I'm just going to start going there, and I'm just going to start adding layers of icing. So again, I'm just sourcing that icing and wrapping it around. Okay. I'm not really worried about losing a whole lot. You can see we can always go back to our original layer and grab more of whatever we need to. So if the candles get lost along the way, which they most likely will, we can always grab some more. Okay. I'm just grabbing from different points. I'm trying to keep this structure mostly together for this cupcake. So you can see I'm kind of doing this rounded motion. I kind of left this part on top to make it really big. Okay, I'm going to make this just a little bit wider, I think. Okay. I think with a cupcake that big, we might need a slightly bigger base, so I'm just going to go on and make this base a little bigger too. And while we're here, might as well just fuck up the shadow a little bit. Okay. So it's not exactly what I had at first, right? But this is a much different version than what we had originally, which is pretty good. Okay. So we can also just take a quick look at what we had before by going back to our layers panel over here on the right. Instead of individually taking each one of these off like this, okay, we can just click and hold and just drag down, okay, and it'll turn off any of the layers we go over, okay. So I turned them all off. I'm going to turn just background layer off, okay. So you can really quickly do all up, all down, you know, and take them all off really quick, okay. So here's what we made by just clone stamping and duplicating some candles from this, all right. So I think you guys can definitely do something like this, if not better, right? You saw me do the whole thing, what tools to use and where to get them to use them the quickest, all right? So I'm hoping for good things.